By the way, if you're holding on for a Frozen reference, just let it go.
Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher and welcome to your Frost Guide for 7.25 and onwards. It is the primary spec that most people are raiding with, if that's your poison, going into the Tomb of Sargeras, although there is some little bit of fire shenanigans going on as I explained in that guide there. You can check that out in the playlist. Without further ado, let's freeze some bitches. So let's get into it. What is the Frost Mage all about? Generally, it's about managing procs and then shattering as much as possible. What is shatter, Preacher? What are you talking about? Well, if we come into here, we have something called shatter. Multiplies the critical strike chance of your spells against frozen targets by 1.5 and adds an additional 50% crit chance. That's right, shattering is guaranteeing critting. That's what we want to do. So it needs a frozen target, and we have a number of ways of doing that. Of course, you can straight up freeze a target. You can do things like Frost Nova, the target's frozen, right? But though you can also use things like our Eben Bolt, which guarantees that we're going to proc something called Flurry. So if we fire an Eben Bolt, or Eben Bolt if you prefer, you see we get this notification up ahead, and this is our Flurry. It fires off a series of snowballs, but you'll be glad to know in 7.3 it actually looks really, really good. And it puts a temporary frozen effect on the target, means that we can fire something into that effect and shatter it. Not only that, we can actually do that 2 times, and I'll show you that in the gameplay, which is very, very cool. But you'll be glad to know, for those of you wondering, double Ice Lance is effectively dead. You can do it kind of with some shimmer shenanigans or blink shenanigans, but generally speaking, it is dead and buried. We will be covering Glacial Spike here as well. So shattering is what it's all about. We have a number of ways we can do that. Now, I talked about managing procs. How do we get procs? From Frostbolt. Frostbolt gives us procs. So it can proc Flurry, as you saw there. And if I continue to cast Frostbolt, hopefully my spec isn't going to cook me. This has a very easy tendency to be RNG heavy. We get these, and this means that our Ice Lance, our instant cast, will now guarantee shatter against this target. You can see it does a guaranteed shatter effect if it procs there. Okay, so that is the shattering effect. Now we have a number of ways of guaranteeing procs. The first one is Eben Bolt, which guarantees a Flurry, and we also have Frozen Orb, which will guarantee our Ice Lance procs when it hits targets, right? We get at least one to fire off. Hopefully we get more than that, but again, RNG is the nature of the beast when it comes to the Frost Mage, yeah? So you can see now the procs are firing off, and we get to all do these shatter Ice Lances. Very, very cool. Other abilities we have are Blizzard, yeah? Blizzard actually reduces the cooldown of Frozen Orb for the targets that it hits. You'll see here the target's like ticking down relatively quickly. It's obviously not taking 35 seconds since I just said that. So Blizzard is a very cool spell. The more targets it hits, the quicker your Frozen Orb will reset, and actually becomes a very important part of our rotation when you get the Tomb of Sargeras gear. I'm actually wearing Arcane gear right now. Hold on. Hold on. Switch it up. Oh, I'm not saving my gear sets. There we go. Something like this. This is not the right one, but this is not the right gear set. I haven't updated it since I got some upgrades. The cooldown of Frozen Orb is reduced by 5 seconds whenever you gain Brain Freeze. So Brain Freeze is that Flurry proc that you saw earlier. And our 2-piece actually, is Frozen Orb increases your critical strike damage by 20% for 10 seconds. So you can see Frozen Orb becomes a very important part of Frost Mage gameplay as your gear gets better. But of course, this is a basic guide. We're going to look at it from people who are getting started and not having access to like BIS Legos and all the tier sets and things like that. So I've explained several spells. Our major DPS cooldown is Icy Veins. Icy Veins is a very, very cool spell. It accelerates your spell casting for 30 seconds. So it's a 30-second cooldown, but you can 3-minute cooldown. But you can reduce that with Frostbolt crits through your artifact weapon. It grants 30% haste and prevents you from preventing damage from delaying your spell cast. Not only that, it increases your damage by 10% when you actually fire it off. So you can pair off some serious burst windows here. If you think about that Frozen Orb tier set I just told you about, mix that with activating Icy Veins, you could do guaranteed crits with heavy, heavy damage via all those things lining up nicely. So something you want to be considering for the future for sure. Our defensive, of course, is Ice Barrier and Ice Block. Now, all the specs get Ice Block, but we can get 2 via our ability Cold Snap, and in Tomb of Soakcraft, very, very important. Very, very important that you know how to reset and use your Ice Block as much as possible, because I gotta tell you, raiding on a Frost Mage right now, you spend a lot of time chilling in an Ice Block, more often than you probably like. Let's talk about stats. So stats are a little up in the air at the moment, but generally speaking, see, this is the wrong gear set. You want to get at least 33% crit. Now, some people go a little bit lower than this if they have extreme gear, but this is going to guarantee your shatter. As I told you, you gain a bonus from shatter to your critical strike chance, and then a multiplier. So you want 33% in order to guarantee the shatter, right? You want to get 33, sit between 33 and 34, get as close as you possibly can. You actually want 33.3, but you want to be above 33%, but below 34. After that, you're just gaining normal crits, and considering we're shattering a lot, you're not getting much benefit from crit. After that, your haste. Now, I like to have about 22% haste, is what I aim for, is to keep that crit level nice and high at 33, and then aim for about 20%. Some people go higher than that. Not many people go lower than 20, okay? 20 is about the right space. Where you're going after that is generally versatility, depending on if you're playing Glacial Spike, in which case your mastery becomes more important. This is where it kind of switches up. You kind of want both of these things for Glacial Spike. You can drop your haste a bit more and then go into Verse and Mastery, right, to build them up. So that's the idea with the statistics there, depending on the talents you choose. Oh, this is the Ice Time build. This is a tidbit. Ice Time, your Frozen Orb explodes. I did an Ice Time Desolate Host and got some really fun cheese out of it. Ice Time Rising, lads. Ice Time Rising. Let's look at our talents then, shall we? We have Ray of Frost. Sadly, doesn't get much use in modern era WoW. They could do with revamping this thing. 1 minute cooldown, and for the next 10 seconds, you can channel a beam of icy power at an enemy, slowing movement by 65% and dealing 160,000 frost damage every 0.8 seconds. Each time Ray of Frost deals damage, its damage is increased by 20%. So it's a very powerful spell. It just isn't worthwhile, unfortunately, compared to everything else. Over the course of a fight, not gonna work. Not gonna work, unfortunately. Now, we're supposed to have a pet. Frost does come with a pet that's very useful in early gear, so I want to talk about it in early gear, because what you can do is an ability called Freeze or Water Jet. Freeze allows you to Frost Nova targets, and if you hit more than one, you'll get more icy Ice Lance charges out of it. So it's very cool to keep that on cooldown and use that if you are going to use the pet. If you're firing against one target, you use Water Jet and you fit Frost Bolts into there to generate some Ice Lance charges that way. So a pet is something you will use in super early gear. I imagine a lot of people see that high-end Frost Mages, such as myself, don't use a pet and therefore pets are shit. That's not the case. We used to say if you want to hit about 900 item level, that's when you start dropping the pet. And you drop the pet via the talent Lonely Winter. So you replace the Summon Water Elemental, you give up on those guaranteed procs. You can no longer summon your Water Elemental, but Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Flurry, and Frozen Orb deal 28% increased damage. So at higher level gear, when your haste is nice and high and stuff, and you're getting many more procs via that, then obviously the more Frostbolts we cast, the more procs we get. Then you're able to say, okay, I'm going to abandon the guaranteed procs that I get from my pet and instead just boost the damage of all my other spells. But you are entering the RNG lottery a little bit. You are entering the RNG lottery there because you're giving up on these very stable regular procs in favor of hoping things proc, but they'll hit really, really hard, which is what you want in endgame raiding, and your gear can support it. Alternatively, you can take Bone Chilling, which is what you'll take if you're going to rock the pet. If you're not quite geared enough for Lonely Winter, you're going to take Bone Chilling. Whenever you attempt to chill a target, you gain Bone Chilling, increasing frost damage dealt by 0.5% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 12 times. So you just get this flat damage buff. That's it. It's not exciting. Neither is Lonely Winter. At least you get to control a pet with Bone Chilling, is what I'll say there. I mean, that's about the must of it. Moving down, you're taking Shimmer. They did give us Ice Flows back. They took it away for a while, but the sad truth is we all learned to play with Shimmer, so I recommend you do as well, because Shimmer is just absolutely fantastic. You should be able to move around very effectively between having... you can move around very effectively with Frost Mage. Between Ice Lance procs, yeah, you can move around while you're doing this, you're not losing any DPS, or Shimmer. Between those two, you should be totally fine to have good mobility in most scenarios, right? You can see how much I could move around there. So that's the answer to that one. At level 45, our decision is basically based around what our end talent's going to be. In nearly every single scenario, we're taking Incanter's Flow, and that's because Frost Mage DPS, despite having that on-demand burst, actually revolves around doing that consistently over very steady periods of time. It's like our Frozen Orb resets very variably, so we can't really predict it down to the T to get the best use out of it. And also, Incanter's Flow allows us to take advantage of the fact that we can bank certain procs. right? We can bank certain procs, so we can save our, like Flurry we'll want to get rid of because we can shatter a Frostbolt into it and stuff, and an Ice Lance. But we can hold Ice Lances, and what you can see is I track my Incanter's Flow here, and if I have some Ice Lance procs, and I would say I'm on one Incanter's Flow, which is the weakest, then I'm going to hold it back a second. There's no reason for me to dump that until I have a decent Incanter's Flow with it, especially when you're doing like big AoE. You'll see the difference between mages who manage Incanter's Flow and the mages that don't. Rune of Power and Mirror Images. Mirror Images, Fire and Forget, not really beneficial compared to being able to pull off these mad bursts and set up the windows like we're going to be doing with all these Frozen Orb procs and stuff that I've already talked about. Similar with Rune of Power is it's very based within this small window, and we have many small windows to deal with. Moving down, level 60. So, Ice Nova just generally is not worth. However, Splitting Ice, you're going to take Splitting Ice anytime. I mean, this is a talent. As your gear gets better and better and better, then you're going to just be taking Splitting Ice all the time, right? But in earlier gear, you're not going to do that. So in earlier gear, you're going to be picking either Frozen Touch or Splitting Ice. So Frozen Touch increases your chance to generate Fingers of Frost, that's our Ice Lance procs, by 40%. So we're getting more and more procs to deal with. However, once you get really high gear, the Ice Lance damage and Icicles increasing by 5% makes much more of an impact, because you're hitting so goddamn hard. Adding 5% more damage to that makes it so much more beneficial. And it also comes hand in hand with being able to reasonably control when these procs are going to happen. And of course, as you've seen from my tier set, is you're getting many more Frozen Orb, which are naturally generating more Ice Lances anyway. So that's hopefully that makes sense to you. As you move up and you're getting more Frozen Orbs, more Ice Lances, and your generally intellect is just so high that you're hitting so goddamn hard that you're going to take Splitting Ice in most occasions. But again, at lower gear levels, Frozen Touch is a nice helping hand for sure. Level 75, pick whatever the hell you want, it doesn't matter. At level 90, Frostbomb. Unfortunately, Frostbomb is so cool. I want to read this to you. Places a Frostbomb on the target for 12 seconds. Only one target, right? Your Ice Lances that benefit from Shatter will trigger the release of waves of freezing ice, dealing 100,000 frost damage to target enemies and 70,000 frost damage to all enemies within 10 yards. So the way you use Frostbomb is you get some Ice Lance procs, or you fire off a Frozen Orb, which guarantees Ice Lance procs. Then you Frostbomb the target and fire your Ice Lances, your shattered ones, yeah, the ones that have been proccing on the side here. These ones, you fire them into it, and it just starts pulsing all this damage. Now, unfortunately, that's incredibly situational and not worthwhile for most scenarios, which is a shame. It used to be much better, but now it's not really worth it. Instead, our choices come down to Arctic Gale, which increases Blizzard's damage by 30% and its area of effect by 20%, making it much larger, or Unstable Magic. And how you choose, will I be casting Blizzard at any point in this fight? That's how you decide. It's as simple as that. Am I going to cast Blizzard at any point in this fight? Yes, then I want Arctic Gale. If no, then I'll take Unstable Magic. That's about it. There's nothing else for me to tell you there. That is as simply it. Arctic Gale buffs Blizzard. Am I casting Blizzard? Yes, then I want to do that because that's going to make my Blizzard bigger, make sure it hits more targets should that be the case, give me more Frozen Orbs, and it works really well. And plus that Blizzard damage is going to do much more. Especially when we consider our artifact ability, Freezing Rain, which is when Frozen Orb is active, Blizzard is instant cast. So you can get like 2 free instant cast Blizzards out, which is very nice. Down at the bottom then, so Comet Storm, not really worthwhile, unfortunately. And that's probably why Comet Storm is baked into the new legendary, this helmet here, which is casting Frostbolts cause Comet Storm to happen. Comet Storm is not worthwhile. Now, Glacial Spike. So Glacial Spike was the big hope of a lot of people, because people fucking love Glacial Spike. They really do, and you might be one of those guys. Not everybody loves it, I don't love it, but a lot of people do love it because they think it does massive numbers, and sometimes it really pays off. So at this point, I'm going to have to tell you about a change that Blizzard made recently, which was they altered the way Flurry works and to stop people doing double Ice Lance. You may have heard of double Ice Lance, it's something that's not really happening now, and what they did was change the travel time of the snowballs of Flurry. Now, what this enabled us to do is shatter our Glacial Spike. So we fire off a Glacial Spike and then we can Flurry it and it shatters into it, guaranteeing the crit of Glacial Spike. Now, that doesn't mean by any means that you're just because if you're not sure how this Glacial Spike works, every Frostbolt we cast gives us an Icicle. You can see the way I'm tracking it here. And every 5 Icicles, we can fire a Glacial Spike. And you'll see these Icicles are floating around my head here. So when I get here, you see the way they come together into the Glacial Spike? Yeah, very awesome. Very cool, and it makes a very, very powerful spell. Very powerful, which hits really hard. And with the change to Flurry, meaning we can shatter it, which basically means guarantee the crit, right? That means that it can do tremendous damage. I mean, I showed a video recently back in Nighthold, actually, in much worse gear, doing 50 mil glacial spikes. It hits really hard, which people find a lot of fun. Unfortunately, when it comes to certainly the further end game you get, the less viable this becomes due to just how the fights work more than anything, and the unpredictability. So one thing I want to address here is people seem to be under the impression it's because you can shatter Glacial Spike, you should be shattering every Glacial Spike. No. Frost is still hugely RNG. So I might get this Flurry proc and I'm thinking, but I'm also thinking every Frostbolt I cast has a chance to proc Flurry. Am I wasting procs if I fire my first Frostbolt to generate my first Icicle? Could I have got another Flurry proc in the next four Frostbolts? Yes, I could. I absolutely could have. I absolutely could have. See the way it's working for me now? So I'll try and make it happen. Let's see if it'll happen. No doubt, like when you're recording a guide, it doesn't happen. What I'm hoping for here is that I don't proc Flurry and I get 5. Yeah, hopefully this won't proc. There we go. So people seem to think that you shouldn't cast Glacial Spike here. No, because every Frostbolt you cast hoping for the proc, like that one, that was 2 Icicles wasted. And over the course of the fight, you're going to end up with many Glacial Spikes not cast. So you can fish for it if you want. If you're feeling lucky and you're like, I'm pretty sure I'm due a Flurry proc, go for it. So there is some choices to be made with Glacial Spike. Maybe your Incanter's Flow is really low, so it's worth casting another Frostbolt while your Incanter's Flow builds back up. This will all come down to experience. What I do want to finish on, though, is Glacial Spike is extremely viable. It is. Now, only if you're Guild Master, or unless you're raiding really endgame Mythic, in which case I wouldn't recommend it. If you're like a Heroic Raider and stuff and you really enjoy it, take it from me. You're totally fine with Glacial Spike. You're absolutely fine. Just make sure you gear for it appropriately. You can't just say, I'll take Thermal Void or Glacial Spike. As I mentioned earlier, different benefits. Like Mastery buffs Icicle damage. It's far more beneficial for Glacial Spike, which is based on your Icicle damage, where Haste isn't that important, but versatility and just buffing flat out damage is, right? So that's all you want to take into account there. If you want to do the raid setup, which is the pretty standard raid setup, you're going to take Thermal Void. Icy Veins duration is increased by 10 seconds. Your Ice Lances against the frozen targets extend your Icy Veins by an additional 1 second. So it's way less interesting than it used to be. A lot of people actually found benefit in this who were struggling to keep Icy Veins up for a long time. So if you're not sure, pre-725, we were able to keep Icy Veins up all the way until it came back off cooldown. I'm not joking if you're listening to this and you didn't know that. It's true. And it was a lot of fun. It was a hell of a lot of fun. In my eyes, a lot of people didn't like it, but I did. Now it's less interesting, but with all the frozen orbs and all the extra ice lances, you should probably understand by now that once you get into raiding, this makes way, way more sense. You still get a lot more benefit out of it, like in a guaranteed way, and therefore it's much, much better. So Thermal Void tends to, as the further you get into gearing and content, the better and better Thermal Void gets. So those are your talent choices. That's how you're going to gear up. So let's look at how you're going to play this thing. Alright, so gameplay-wise, I'm going to take you through the basics. Now, as your Frost Mage gets better, and you do start getting like 4-piece, I did manage to sort my gear out eventually, then your windows of opportunity increase and become a little bit more condensed in how you deal with them. But you should make sense of them as long as you understand the basics of it. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is Flurry and Even Bolt. So Flurry is our ability to shatter spells. We can shatter Frostbolts into Flurry, and we can shatter our Even Bolt, as I showed you earlier. But you can also do some cool stuff. So the way Flurry works is the travel times and stuff mean that you could shatter the Even Bolt, right? So we know Even Bolt will give us a Flurry, guaranteed. So you can Even Bolt and cast Flurry, and they will travel and meet the target at the same time, giving you the shatter. However, I actually need to get rid of this. What if you have a Flurry already? Well, what you could do is Blizzard did a very nice quality of life change, meaning that if you have a Flurry and you fire an Even Bolt into it, the actual Brain Freeze proc comes a little bit later. So there you go, I've got a Flurry now, right? So if I cast Even Bolt into this and then Flurry it, watch what happens. It comes back, so you could do it again, right? Really, really cool how Blizzard did this. So you can see I'm shattering my Frostbolts. I'm firing the Frostbolt and then Flurrying it. That's shattering the Frostbolts and getting the benefit out of those. Not only that, the debuff of Flurry lasts a second or so after it hits. You'll notice, in fact, if I just proc one here, what I want you to watch is actually the target. Because what you're going to see is as Flurry hits us over its multiple snowballs, Watch, just watch here. The frozen effect actually refreshes itself for a second or so. You see that? And what that allows us to do is squeeze an Ice Lance, even though we haven't got the proc, into that window in order to get like a shattered Frostbolt or Even Bolt and a shattered Ice Lance into every flurry. So flurry is very, very important. Very, very important. So if you see here, if I cast Even Bolt, I'm going to get the flurry, I'm going to follow it with an Ice Lance flurry, and I'm going to Ice Lance it. And even though I didn't have the proc, the Ice Lance shattered, right? This is something you want to get in the habit of. Every flurry should be shattering a Frostbolt or an Even Bolt and then followed up with an Ice Lance. That's all I'm trying to tell you. It's very simple. It might seem complicated, but it's actually really easy. Flurry just means that I fired flurry. I fire Ice Lance after that, right? Where a lot of Frost Mages get confused is when they have a flurry up and Ice Lance charges. Ideally, you don't want to have a procced Ice Lance while you've got Flurry. So I might be banking these because my Encounters flow high. Right, I'm going to dump my Encounters flows high. Cool, I'm going to dump my Ice Lances and try and get rid of them at the best possible opportunity, right? That's what you're going to do. But what you'll encounter sometimes is Flurry. Shatter that one. You'll encounter Flurry while you have an Ice Lance proc, right? And then you're going to think to yourself, do I cast another Frostbolt and then Ice Lance that, then Frost Shatter my next Frostbolt and Ice Lance after that, because that gains me one Ice Lance, right? That's your thought process. So let me try and get it here. B-D-D-D-D. Oh, I'm going to get it here because I'm going to have this. Okay, excellent. So let me get the Frozen Orb up. So this is a very exaggerated scenario. But you're casting a Frostbolt and now you have an Ice Lance. What do you do? Honestly, in most scenarios, you just shatter the Ice Lance. And the reason you do that is that Frostbolt that you cast extra to get rid of the Ice Lance could have procced another Flurry. You're missing out. That's generally the thought process that goes into it. In an ideal world, you'll proc Ice Lances and get rid of them, right, before you proc a Flurry. But it doesn't always happen that way. Such is the nature of the beast, and therefore you're going to have to adapt to the scenario on the fly. It really comes down to how RNG wants to play with you that day, whether you're into holding your Ice Lances or whether you just shoot them off. The DPS difference is actually quite small, so if you get an Ice Lance proc and you just want to shoot them off before you cast the next Frostbolt, you can feel free to do that in early days. That's no big deal, but ideally you want to be shattering flurries like that, not wasting Ice Lance procs. But as I said, it doesn't always work out that way. This Frostbolt could cast a flurry, and then it didn't, but that's Frost Mage for you. That's Frost Mage for you. When it comes to AoE, obviously Frozen Orb and Blizzard, awesome combo. Try and take advantage of as many instant cast Blizzards as possible. Hope for Ice Lance procs, get those Ice Lances going, but also still mix in your flurries as well. Your main goal is to keep Blizzard ticking to generate more Frozen Orbs and using any Ice Lance procs that you get. That's generally your goal. You see, Frozen Orb comes back, so I'm going to get rid of it. If I was AoEing and then a Frozen Orbit and then I follow that up with the Blizzard, and I'm going to keep Ice Lancing, I'm going to keep Ice Lancing, I'm going to keep Ice Lancing because I'm AoEing, and now I'm really awesome because I got loads of procs, and that's totally skill-based Blizzard, isn't it? No, it's not. As you can see, I'm a little salty about this character because its RNG heaviness weighs heavy on the mind, let's put it that way. So that's the simplistic approach to it. That's the very simplistic approach to how you make this work. Try and pair up trinkets. So if you do manage to get yourself like an owl trinket like I've got, try and pair it up with Icy Veins. And of course Frozen Orb, because you're getting that 10% increased crit. You're getting all the bonus damage from Icy Veins. You're getting trinkets on top of that. All very cool. All very good. So that's your basic stuff. I'll do a gameplay video on my Frost Mage. I think there's a plus 17 going with this one. So either way, there you go. Frost Mage. Enjoy, my friends. Bye-bye. In conclusion to the Frost Mage then is it's a ton of fun. I am happy with it most of the time. Most of the time. Its proc rates can be a little wonky and if you get really unlucky it can suck. But you can counter that with relics and whatnot. You'll have to base it on your Frost Mage. Add-ons I recommend. I've had severely high ranks, particularly in Nighthold. Now we're doing progression, so I don't really give a shit about rankings whatsoever. With just using Tell Me When. Making sure I know when my Icy Veins is coming back, when my Frozen Orbs are coming back, and just having that nice countdown to say, okay, one of my big windows is coming up, how best to utilize it. That's all I need to use. You guys might want other stuff, and weak auras is always a good one to recommend, but relatively speaking, it's a very simple spec that you can get on with. Alright guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the guide, and I hope you enjoy your Frost Mage. Bye-bye.